Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and in this video we're going to keep moving on with our DOM stuff and start talking about events. Events is when things really start kind of getting exciting, okay, because that's when you start seeing things kind of happen magically. So let's set up. I'm going to clean out my HTML. I'm going to clean out my JavaScript, so I'm just delete all this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a div. Actually, well, yeah, div is fine. We'll have a div, and then below that div, we're going to have a button. And that button is going to just say, click me. Okay, so that's in my HTML. Okay, now I'll go to my JavaScript. And now, an event, first let's select the button. So const button equals document.query selector button. Okay, that'll select the button. Okay, and again, we always want to just double check that did I actually successfully grab the button, because that way if I have a bug, I've caught it early. Okay, good. I did get the button. Okay, there's the button. Oh wait, I just console log the string button. Oops. I want to console log the variable button. And there we go. That's better. That looks more like what I expected. Okay, I have the button that's called click me. So what I want to do is have something happen when you click on the button. So every button has, there's two ways I could do this. Every button has, or every element, every node has lots of events. I kind of mentioned those earlier. There's like on this, on that, on whatever. So there are actually properties on the element. So I can actually go button.onClick and actually just assign it a function. Okay. Okay, so like here is a function, and it will, when I click on it, it'll just console.log I've been clicked. Okay, so basically we're just saying, hey, the button's on click property, so whenever a click event happens, it should run this function. So if I click on it now, hey, look, see, I've been clicked. Now it's been clicked twice. It's been clicked again. That's one way to do it, and you'd have to kind of know all the events. So you're on click, on this, on that, and which is fine. This works perfectly fine. And just so you also know, whenever an event happens, we don't see it, but the HTML, I mean the browser, when it runs the event, passes an object into this function. So if we want to capture the object, we have to put in some sort of label for the object in here in the parameters of the function. And again, if you're not familiar with what I mean by parameters and arguments are, then please watch my like functions in 45 minutes video where I go over like everything you'd ever want to know about JavaScript functions. But usually what you want to do is pass in, typically what you're going to do is you're going to pass in like event or E, because what's the name of the object is called an event object. So if I console log the event object, let's take a look. So every event, doesn't matter if it's a click event, a submit event, a change event, any event always gets an event object. So when I click here, it triggers the event. The browser is going to create this object, has all the details about the event, and we're going to have access to it. So I click and see, this is specifically a mouse event object because the event occurred by the usage of the mouse. Okay, so if I click on this, I can see all these different properties, like for example, like where I clicked, like coordinates of where I clicked, things about bubbling. I'm not going to get into bubbling right now, but there's all these properties you can use. Okay, but this is all about like where I clicked. Okay, was I holding the shift key? So see, it says shift key false. So if I hold the shift key and click again, I'll get another object, and now the shift key is true because I was holding the shift key, which is pretty useful because then you can actually make certain events only happen if the shift key was, and there's a couple other ones like shift key, let's see here, there's I don't remember what the meta key is. Control key, so if you're holding the control key, I think there's one for alt, yep, alt key. So you can take any event and make it where something happens if you hold down the right combination of keys, which is pretty cool. More importantly, you see here there's a target element, and see target. Target represents the thing that triggered the event. So I click the button, so the button is the target, and now I can actually access the button via the thing. Okay, so if I go here, and I can see all the buttons elements. Okay, so I can see all the buttons elements. Okay, But see, that was a mouse event. Here are some like keyboard events, like on key down, on key press, on key up. Okay, we can play with like keyboard things. So if I were to change this to on key press, let's take a look at what happens. F is not defined. Oh, I put F down there. Okay, so let me hit a keystroke. Now the problem is you can't really keystroke on a button. So let's see if I highlight it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so if I focus on it and then click, I can do this. Like, that's not very practical. So usually like key press events are going to be like on the window, so that way it can be when you press a key anywhere or whatnot. But like, as you can see, that the keyboard event, I get a keyboard event object, and it has like same thing, like alt key, shift key. It tells you what kind of key it is, so I can go right, use which property I want to use. Here, key. So I can say, so that way you can be like, okay, if, like for example, I'll say if, and we can play around with that. So we can say, hey, if event.key equals L, then do this. And then what we'll do is we'll alert you pressed L. Else, just console.log the event. So again, I'm going to highlight the button because the event is on the button. And then I'll hit a key and see I just get a keyboard event object, because that's what I said. Hey, if it's not L, but if I push L, I get the alert. You pushed L. You pressed L. So you can do some pretty fun stuff with events. But again, this is only one way to do it. Another way you can add an event, there's a function that allows you to kind of just do this, I think, kind of in a simpler way. It's called add event listener. And what add event listener does is that instead of you having to spell on press, on click, on this, on that, you just spell the event. So I want to say click. So it says, okay, on the click event, and all this function is really doing is just assigning that property. So exactly what we just did a second ago, that's what this function is doing. It's just letting you define it all in one line, kind of in another way. And then the second argument is the function. So it would be like event. And the event we're going to pass is, we'll just say console.log. You clicked it. So I click it. You clicked it. Okay? So you can trigger all sorts of events. And we can actually start manipulating the DOM here. So again, we added that div earlier. So let me grab that div. So whenever you click this button, it's going to const div. Okay. Equals a const document dot query selector div. We select the div, and then what I want to do is create a new element. So we'll create a new h1 equals h1 document dot create element h1, and then we want to give that h1 some text. So h1 dot text content equals this is an h1, and then we'll append the h1 to the div. So I'll click the button. Oh, there's an h1. Click it again. Another h1. Another h1. Another h1. So every time I click it, it's just doing that thing again. Okay, so you can create manipulations of the DOM based on events. Now let's say I had lots of buttons. Okay, so let's go back to the HTML. I'm going to add lots of buttons. And then each button's going to say something different. So we're going to say moo, quack, meow, rough. Okay, now I could individually add a listener to each one of these buttons. That might take a bit. So, but if I know there's gonna be lots of things I want to click on, and I don't want to create like a whole bunch of different event listeners and have to add all these individually, what you could do is you could do something like this. You could do the event on the window. Again, the window represents the browser. So I can say window dot add event listener. Whenever we click on the window, what I want to do, so again, we'll grab the event, and we'll first console.log event.target. Because again, the target's supposed to be whatever triggered the event. But now the whole window has the event listener. So if I click on anything in the window, it should trigger it. Okay, so in this case, the target is the full HTML because I clicked in this big white area, which is the entire document. If I click on the button moo is a target. If I click on quack is the target. Cool. Let's take advantage of that. Okay, so this is where you can really kind of like make things programmatic. So I can do something like let me console log the event real quick because there's another thing I want to check. So I click on moo, mouse event, and does the word button get stored anywhere? Source element target button. False, true, path. That's the element. So let's see if we can get the name target. And does that have the name of the element somewhere that I can just compare for like do an if? Here we go. Local name. Okay, so we can use that. So if we can use event.target.local name, so basically is the name of the target a button? If it's not a button, don't do this. Okay, and again that should be an if. If event.target.local name equals button, then what I want to do is alert event.target.inner text. So whatever the text of the button is, I want that to be alerted. And again, see, I never actually mentioned the button, but because I'm grabbing the target based on the event, I can do that. So if I click here, nothing happens because this is not going to have the local name button. But if I click on this button here, moo, quack, meow. Okay, so just some fun, so you can really take advantage of that event object in some fun ways and really make certain things happen, basically really programmatically limit how much you really have to click or how much code you have to write, because you can take advantage of, hey, I can just put a click listener on the whole window and only these, but I would only do this if there's a lot of things you can click on. Okay, if there's just like a button, I would just select the button and add the event listener to the button. It's just more specific. It's going to give you a little bit more granular control, but the idea is to show you can see you have options on how to like work with your events. So yeah, so that's about working with events. Okay, and the next one we'll talk about working with like forms specifically and kind of like how to deal with forms. But yeah, so my name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Have a great day and enjoy.